Hello everybody, I welcome you on this event. Today I'll talk to you about inflammation. But before we start, this is our statement. This presentation is only information for personal use about the ingredients of the RAIN products. The RAIN International products and presentations are not for diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and medical treatment must not be stopped because of taking RAIN products. So let's see, what is the inflammation? What is the definition? What we're talking about? If your body starts to activate the cells of your immune system, it will send out cells that cause inflammation in the body. I am sure you all experienced this before. And these cells, they can attack the bacteria or any damaged tissue or viruses, but also things can go wrong in the body, and many times we face the chronic inflammation when you don't have a so-called acute disease, a acute virus infection or acute bacterial infection or injury, but the body still sending out these inflammatory cells, and this chronic inflammation is one of those situations that can cause the most problem in the body. So I really believe we have to talk about it. I'll show you some pictures. You can see that's what already everybody face, that for example, the inflammation on the skin. You can have heat rashes when you go out and your skin get inflamed. There could be a autoimmune disease in the skin and causing different type of redness. It could be infection, either caused by viruses or bacteria. It can be allergic reaction, like little spots on the skin. It can be caused by any chemical, or it can be caused by a plant or something, or bee or wasp sting. It can be from the sun. If you go out to the sun too much, you get sunburn, and you see the level of the sunburn. First it's only red, and then you get the blisters and they break and you get little scars on the skin. And also the photosensitivity, if you face the sun too much, or you use some kind of lotion that makes your skin more sensitive to the sun. If you have an injury, the body around the injury make a inflammation, and this is the symptoms what we see on a acute inflammation. It's painful, it's warm, the body temperature goes higher. So when you have a systemic inflammation, you get fever. When you have inflammation located on one part of the body, it's getting warm. The swelling, it's obviously got edema, and it's red. These are the symptoms of the inflammation. It could be from an injury, it could be from a virus or bacterial infection, but this is the 4 signs. We always look at the pain, the warmness, the swelling, and the redness. And we know it could be caused by the bacteria, the viruses, chemicals, the sun, so many things. When you have chronic inflammation, you won't see these signs, but you see on the lab results there are more white blood cells. The inflammatory signals in the blood, they higher, like the CRP, is the C-reactive protein, or the blood sedimentation is higher also. So you get signs, and you need to look for where is the inflammation in the body. And let's see what RAIN products can help. Obviously, we're not saying that these products will cure the inflammation. we say that these products got ingredients that can reduce the inflammation. Obviously, it's always you have to find the cause of the inflammation, because if you have something going on in the body and you just focus on the symptom, then it will not help, it will not be very helpful for you. But these products can help to reduce the inflammation and find the main cause for the inflammation. So the first is our basic product, the Rain Sol. The Sol is a very powerful anti-inflammatory product, and the main ingredient is the black cumin seed, which you can see it's been called as a panacea, which means it cures everything. It helps the bowel, the digestion, the absorption. It got a antiviral and antibacterial activity. It's a very strong antioxidant. It helps to fight against cancer, and also these unsaturated fatty acids, they got a anti-inflammatory effect also. The black cumin seed is one of the main ingredients that we got in all of our products, and it's a very strong anti-inflammatory. And it's not only anti-inflammatory, but we say it's a very powerful immune modulant, which means it helps the immune system to get stronger if it's weak, like in the case of cancer or in case of any kind of infections. And if the immune system is overacting, like autoimmune disease or allergic disease, it will decrease, it will reduce this overactivity. So we can say the black cumin seed basically harmonize the immune system, the work of the immune system. The other ingredient is the black roseberry seed, which we know is also a very powerful anti-inflammatory, and it's got a very powerful, very high ORAC value, so it's strong antioxidant. It helps all parts of your body, but also protects the blood vessels, your heart, your memory. The grape seed also have a anti-inflammatory effect, and it also helps your body, the circulation, and it will help to reduce the bacteria also. So if you look who we can say who the Sol would be good basically for overall well-being, any kind of inflammation, and lots of other conditions that you can use. It can help for immune deficiencies, chronic infections, bacterial infections. Also, of course, I don't say that if you have an acute bacterial infection, you should treat it with this. You should go to the doctor. But when somebody got a chronic disease, then it's good to look other solutions also. What are the contraindications? Pregnancy. Pregnant women should not take the Sol because of the ingredients can make the immune system so powerful, so strong that it could be harmful for during pregnancy. If somebody taking anticoagulant blood thinner therapy, you have to be careful. And before and after surgery, for a few days, you should leave it out. If somebody is allergic to any kind of ingredients, then of course we don't give this product to those allergic patients. And in the inflammatory bowel diseases, the Crohn and ulcerative colitis, because of the fibers, we would prefer the Sol Red. The Sol Red is a very powerful, very similar to the Sol, but it don't have the fibers inside. So you can use the Sol Red to those patients who got inflammatory bowel diseases also. Here is the difference in the Sol Red and the Sol. It's got black cumin oil inside and not black. It's got red roseberry seeds and a very high, extremely high ORAC value. Basically, we advise to the same group of people, but also it could be really good help for losing weight and we can say it's a real fat burner. So if somebody wants to lose weight or just use in general overall well-being, you can use the Soul Red. And also, as I said, the inflammatory bowel diseases, we prefer use the red. The contraindications will be the same, except for you can use this for those conditions when you cannot take the fibers. So the pregnancy, the anticoagulant therapy, before and after surgery, and allergies, these basically all contraindications for all of the products. If we go one step in the chronic inflammation, you can see the cellular toxicity cause chronic inflammation. What could cause cellular toxicity? When you have too much toxic material in the body, in the cells. We can see that basically now the majority of the people, basically we can say nearly everybody, got lots of toxic material in the body, and these toxic material cannot get out because of the lack of vitamins, because of the lack of minerals. The body detox systems don't work good enough, or they do work, but too much toxic material comes from the food, the cosmetic products, the cleaning materials, the air pollution, agriculture, what they use for the fertilizers, and what they use against the bugs, or anything in what they spray the plants with. So basically, from the environmental pollution, the food, the artificial food, the processed food, you get lots of toxic material into the body, and the body basically needs some help. The Ring got an excellent product to help the detox. This is called Core, which is a green powder detoxifier, and you can see the ingredients here on this diagram. And I tell you, it's got the black cumin seed inside, which we know is a very strong antioxidant and very strong anti-inflammatory. The milk thistle seed helps the liver to detox. Dandelion is like the 5-star hotel cleaning service. Dandelion will clean everything, every little part in your body. The wheatgrass got lots of good ingredients, lots of good enzymes to help your body. The cranberry seed oil helps the kidney. Chlorella spirulina, they help to get rid of the material inside the cells. The kale, aloe vera, and chlorophyll, they got lots of good ingredients, lots of good minerals, also enzymes, and they all very powerful anti-inflammatory. The kale also got a compound that can help to reduce the excess estrogen in the body. So if somebody got too much or a hormonal imbalance because of something is too much in the body, it usually comes from the toxic materials. The kale can help in that too. So if you want to detox your body, then basically you can, or if you have chronic inflammation, you should use the Soul and the Core together, because one helps to reduce the inflammation, get rid of the viruses and the bacteria, and the other one helps to get rid of the toxic material. My experience with the Core, that you should take for longer time. Don't just take it for 1 month, you should take it for a longer time. And we talk about a chronic inflammation on the joints, which affects many people. You can see osteoarthritis, which comes from the age, and the rheumatoid arthritis that comes from an autoimmune disease. So when you have an autoimmune disease, it means that the body attacks its own cells. In these cases, you have to look at the chronic virus infections, you have to look at the food intolerances, why is the immune system overacting. This case must be treated by the doctor, but next to the doctor treatment, we can help with local and herbal products. But of course, when we're talking about the joints and the ligaments, you cannot leave out the exercises. You have to move your joints and your body, and also the whole body system. If somewhere there is inflammation in the body, it can be on the joints also. So most of the people just want to have a solution for these kind of problems. So we got one product, is the band, which got many ingredients. It got cartilage builders inside, glucosamine and hyaluronate. The glucosamine and the hyaluronate can help to build the cartilages inside the joints, and also the hyaluronate acid helps to lubricate those joints, so they're not only getting the cartilage, but they help to get the fluid inside, the good fluid, the lubrication inside the joints. And it got many anti-inflammatory ingredients. You can say the black cumin seed, the flax seed, the curcumin, vitamin K2, vitamin D3, these all very strong anti-inflammatory. I always say that the band is not only a joint care product, but it's a very strong anti-aging product because it helps your whole body to reduce the inflammation. The curcumin, the black cumin seed, the flax seed, they're very powerful anti-inflammatory, and usually the aging processes comes from the chronic inflammation in the body. So these ingredients, they can help to reduce the inflammation, and it protects your blood vessels, your joints, and every little part in your body. Vitamin K2 and D3, these very important two ingredients to build up your bones, but also help to get down the excess calcium from the blood vessels. Because if you only take calcium, if you only take vitamin D, then all the calcium will remain inside the blood vessels, causing arteriosclerosis, which we don't want to have. So you need to put the vitamin K2 inside, and vitamin K2 helps to move this calcium into the bones. And one more thing about the curcumin. The curcumin is a very powerful anti-inflammatory. It's very powerful against the viruses also. And it's really good for the joints. But the curcumin is fat soluble. So if you go to the pharmacy and buy just one powder and you don't put it to, basically it's a herb you can use for your cooking, but if you don't put it to a oil or fat environment, it will absorb much lower level. So in this black cumin seed, flaxseed environment, the curcumin is more active also. It's not on the diagram, but the product contains bioperine. The bioperine is an ingredient that makes the curcumin more effective. And one more thing about the chronic inflammation. Many patients got vitamin D deficiency. The vitamin D deficiency can cause inflammation in the body. And you can just see the inflammation in the bowel, which is a problem for many people. You can see if the level of the vitamin D is lower, then the bad bacteria will start to grow inside the bowel, and the cells of the bowel will let through things that not supposed to go through, and pro-inflammatory, like things that make inflammation will get higher. So if you have enough vitamin D in the body, then the anti-inflammatory processes will take place. But my experience from my patients are that most of the patients don't have enough vitamin D. So when they have a lab test, it always should check how much is the vitamin D inside the body, because once the vitamin D is not enough, it can cause lots of problems. And we have one product, is the Vive3, which got vitamin D3 inside, vitamin E, and I put down mixed tocopherols here, which is important because we know that the vitamin E is very powerful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. It helps the body when you eat it from food. But they found, this is the vitamin E paradoxon, they found that if you don't take it from food, but you take it from a pharmaceutical product, alpha tocopherol only itself is harmful for the body. It can increase the heart problems, and it can increase the risk of the cancer. So if you look at a product and it's got mixed tocopherols inside, it means it's come from natural sources, contains all those tocopherols, not only the alpha, the beta, gamma, delta, and tocotrienols and some other parts. That's like when you eat it with the food. So that's the natural source, which is good. That's the good part, the good type of vitamin E. So you always should look at this for the vitamin E. And it also got tomato seed oil and sea buckthorn oil. They all help the immune system and reduce the inflammation. They're powerful against any kind of chronic diseases. And the citrus extracts also in the product. So this is not a ordinary vitamin D, because it got many other ingredients that helps to boost the immune system. It helps to make your immune system working even better. So when we look at the products, I didn't talk about the Pure and the Bright. The Pure is a pre and probiotics for your bowel health, and the Bright is one of my favorite products actually. It's for your brain sharpness. But what I talked about, the Soul Red helps to reduce the inflammation in the body. The Core helps to detox. The Bend helps the joints and the ligaments and also the blood vessels. And the Vive helps to make your immune system working better, and also replace the vitamin D3. The Bend got vitamin D3 also, and the Bend got the vitamin K with it, because in long term when you take vitamin D, you have to put the vitamin K next to it, because the vitamin K, as I said, moves the calcium from the blood to the joints. The Vive is a immune stronger product, so it's not only a vitamin D designed for the joints. If you want to use for joints and bones, you should take the Bend, but you can take the two together, it's no problem. So I thank you very much for your attention. This is my Rain email address. You can send short questions. Please don't send me a whole history of last 10 years of your life, because I won't be able to answer those questions. Those need to have lots of other questions, go back and forward. And I want to ask one thing, please translate it to English, because I won't be able to understand no other language, so if you could do translate for English. And also the medical papers, I can understand some, like the numbers, but I won't be able to figure out what's written down there. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a very good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.